Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to the third and final day of our boot camp. I hope you all have had an enriching and insightful learning experience over the past 2 days. I am Kritika, Deputy Director, Community Engagement at Climate Cadet Collective, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Over the last 2 days, we have explored the foundation of climate research, evidence-based policy writing, advocacy, climate. Today, we bring everything together as we review your submission, discuss your learnings, and answer your questions. I encourage everyone to actively participate, ask questions, and make the most out of this final session. Without further ado, let's begin. It's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panel for today's session. First, we have Parth, founder of ECB Sustainable Youth Foundation, whose work in sustainability, climate leadership, and youth engagement has inspired young change makers and researchers. Parth, the floor is yours.
So, very good evening, everyone. First of all, congratulations to every participant who submitted a paper or an abstract, and completing a research manuscript or even taking the first step for developing a research idea. It is not something easy, and it requires curiosity, it requires discipline, it requires the courage to actually put your ideas in form of a critique and every submission which we have received, it represents all your efforts, all the time, and all the genuine interest which we have put in addressing these real world challenges. And it was a pleasure hosting you in the last two sessions. And we started by the Climate Cube taking over the academic writing part, and we had the ECB Sustainability Foundation, which covered the policy part of the session. And it's good to see how you all have amalgamated both these different streams and come up with your submissions. It has been a privilege to serve as one of the reviewers for this research bootcamp. And while I was reviewing these submissions, I wasn't looking for whether someone wrote like a senior academician. I was actually looking for something more important, which is there a meaningful research question, or is there a clear methodology, or uh, does this research have the potential to contribute to solving a real world problem? And one thing that actually stood out was the diversity of the topics which you all selected. So we saw papers on biological conservation, on artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, digital health, telemedicine, universal accessibility, environmental justice, climate adaptation, urban heat island, disaster governance, and post-humanist perspective on Dal Lake, mental health after disaster, smart cities, and so much more. And that diversity itself reflects an important reality, which is today's global challenges are interconnected with each other, and we are in a polar crisis. And climate change is no longer just an environmental issue; it intersects with public health, governance, technology, law, education, psychology, urban planning, and social justice. And many participants actually recognize these connections, which was actually encouraging for me to see. And another positive observation was that many participants attempted to move beyond simply describing problems, and they actually tried to delve deep into it and propose policy recommendations, governance frameworks, or practical interventions. And that is exactly the direction research should take. And it shouldn't be just what is wrong, but also what can be done. And we saw that in a lot of papers, students really appreciate that. And we also made an important decision during the review process. Initially, many submissions were basically initially many submissions that were just abstracts. They might have been rejected because they were incomplete. However, we recognize that a strong research idea is valuable even before a full paper exists. So rather than judging only the completeness of the submission, we also considered whether the topic was significant, whether the proposed methodology was feasible, and whether the research could actually generate some meaningful impact in the future. And if those elements were present in the paper, we view the submission as something that can be nurtured further through collaboration and mentorship. And we believe that is one of the strengths of this bootcamp. That is not just about selecting papers, it is actually about helping the researchers grow. And at the same time, some common areas of improvement which emerged across multiple submissions were firstly was the clarity of the research question. So, many research papers which we saw they discussed very important issues, but the central research question which was there, it was either too broad or not clearly articulated. So first thing which we would recommend is a focused research question on because it is what gives direction to the entire study. Second was the methodology. So many submissions explain that why a topic matters, but did not spend a lot of time explaining how the research would actually be conducted. Sorry, and research is convincing not only because of what it claims, but also because how it reaches those conclusions. So whether you're using surveys, interviews, case studies, policy analysis, systematic literature, or mixed methods, the methodology should always be transparent and appropriate for the research question. And the third was actually the distinction between opinion and evidence. So some paper made a strong normative argument, while which is perfectly acceptable in when we talk about policy research. But the arguments which are made, they need to be grounded in some credible literature or supported by some facts and evidence. Basically, evidence strengthens arguments. Always remember that. And finally, many submissions would actually benefit from a stronger engagement with existing literature because every paper should clearly explain not only what the previous studies have not found, but also what gap the current research intends to fill. And that's actually where the originality comes from. And I also noticed something encouraging among several submissions, which was that many researchers are beginning to think across different disciplines. And for example, one of the papers connected environmental justice with mental health. Another paper, it linked education with climate adaptation. And then there was another paper which examined legal identity as a part of disaster governance. And these kind of interdisciplinary perspectives are increasingly important because, as I said earlier, that real world problems they really fit into one academic discipline in today's time, and we are in a poly crisis. So as we move forward, I would like to encourage everyone to think about three questions whenever you start a research project. First is why does this research matter? Second is how will I answer my research question? And the third and the most important is who benefits if this research is implemented? And if you can answer these three questions clearly, you have already laid the foundation of a meaningful research project. And I also want to acknowledge all the mentors, all the reviewers, the presenters, and organizers and the facilitators who invested their collective efforts in reading submissions, taking sessions, making all the beautiful presentations we saw in both the days, and providing feedback and supporting participants throughout this entire boot camp. And always remember that constructive peer review is one of the most valuable parts of research, and it helps transform good ideas into rigorous scholarships. So, to everyone who participated, whether your submission was accepted, marked for revision, or is still at the abstract stage, this should not be seen as an endpoint. In fact, research is iterative, and almost every published paper has gone through multiple rounds of revisions. That's common. So the first draft is really the final draft, and the most important thing about the first draft is that it should exist. A lot of you have taken that step. So continue refining your questions and strengthening your methodologies and engaging with the literature and seeking feedbacks. And finally, I hope that this bootcamp is not simply remembered as a competition for a certificate, but as the beginning of a research journey. And the world needs researchers who are not only technically sound but also socially conscious and ethically grounded. We had a discussion about ethicality in research in the first session. And researchers who are willing to work across different disciplines to address complex global challenges. And judging by the ideas we reviewed over the past few days, I'm optimistic that many of you will contribute meaningfully to that future. And thank you and congratulations once again to all the participants. And I wish everyone all the very best for your future research journeys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parth, for your time and guidance. Now, I would like to introduce Devashish. He is the Deputy Director of Research and Ideation at Climate Cadets Collective. He is currently pursuing Bachelor's in Sustainable Urbanism with a minor in Sociology at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University. Devashish is actively contributing to research on Delhi's urban villages, focusing on social, fashion, and development dynamics. Over to you, Devashish.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So hi everyone, and first of all, many congratulations to everyone who submitted their research, whatever. their research articles, and who basically worked hard, and they were they worked hard and hello. Hello, is there any background voice?
No, your voice is coming.
Okay. Yeah. So
Devashish, you can go ahead. You're audible.
hello, am I audible?
You are.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Parth and Vaishnavi, for providing me with this opportunity to review certain review these articles from all around the globe. When I was going through these research articles, I could see some missions from all around the globe. From Budapest, there was someone from Budapest. There was someone from the neighbor country, Pakistan, and it gave, I read through them, I got the global perspective of how people how students
Is the voice
students around the
breaking
globe
for
are thinking.
everyone? I'm so sorry.
Yes, there's no
Yeah,
echo
it
in his
is.
voice.
Yes.
Devashish, can you try to rejoin with a network issue? Maybe try from another device if possible. All right. In the meantime, Devashish is coming. I'll go ahead. So, firstly, thank you so much, everyone, for submitting your research papers, articles, abstracts, in so many large numbers. Like, we were not expecting that we would receive almost 60 plus papers altogether, and they are all very good written papers, right? So, as you can just see that 60 plus papers revision date within like 4 to 5 days. It was not a really big it was literally a very big task. But I'm glad that we actually completed the review process. And now we have three people in three categories of all. We've divided them into three different categories. One, which ones are selected. The second, which requires some revisions before we actually can send them out, or some things can be changed. That is a good research, but it requires a bit of more things to be added into it. And third, a few research papers which are a little doubtful, that I think more and more work can be put upon it, and more work can be put on it. So as in, they're not in the final stage of them, they're just in the beginning, but more work can be happening in them. So following this session, maybe by tomorrow, research directors will send you all an email about the status of your paper. The status and everything that we have right now is all ready, but it is not possible to share all the 60 paper reviews within just an hour session. So what we have today is that we have decided that we will be giving you a brief of whatever we common mistakes, common things we actually looked into it. And also this session was supposed to be one, like after your research, the third stage, which is of publication. So I think Parth by now has very well mentioned the issues in the papers, the common mistakes he really mentioned, and I think that gave you a little more idea. He was also referring to a few papers while he was doing that. And we have Devashish also, who will tell you other things also, because he has also reviewed a lot of papers and he has some comments. So we'll listen to Devashish, and then we'll come back to the third part, and that comes to the publication. So I will give a few guidelines about publication process and everything. Just checking with Devashish if is now here.
He's joining and you have to wait a bit.
Okay. So, okay, let's do one more thing then. In the meantime, so yeah, let's discuss the publication part of it. So, as I mentioned, you will all receive an email after this session, about the status of your paper, and the ones who really want to continue. For example, the ones which are green, which means that they are actually right. The papers which papers are accepted, we would be reaching out to you with your publication process and everything. There would be some directors who would be assigned to you, which will be directly collaborating with this Climate Cadets Collective and will help you out in publishing them either on our website or either on some other publication houses. We'll look into it. For the second category of people which are marked yellow, you can we can share the particular comment that we have from the reviewers with you over the, like, you can check in the Excel sheet itself that we'll be sharing with you. But I think the more, like, maybe this is something, a question that I have from all of you, that if you really want to continue working on that particular paper with Climate Cadets Collective's research team, within research team, and you want us to be working more and more and get you help, like help you and assist you in publication part after working on it. So you can reply to the email, or once we send you an email, you can send us an email back on climatecadetscollective@gmail.com, and you can say that I would like to work on this paper more with Climate Cadets Collective. So what we will do after that is we will assign you one of our research team member as well, and then you all who will help you out working in that particular research, and then you both would be working on that particular research.
Sorry to interrupt, but Devashish is here.
Okay. Just I'm completing and then he can. Thank you for informing me. Yes, so you can send us an email once we update you about the status of your papers. You can send us an email or reply to the same email and say that we would like to collaborate with Climate Cadets Collective's research team to work on this particular paper and further enhance this research. So we are very happy to do these collaborations, and you can collaboration can be on an organizational basis, can be on personal individual reviewers basis as well. So for example, first you will try to give the reviewer only, and let's say there's someone who is interested in Climate Cadets Collective who would like to work on this particular research paper with you. We will assign that to you, and then we would move on with that paper ahead. Now, for the third category, people whose research papers are not selected, and I think there's something very wrong with the kind of an idea or the basic conceptual clarity which is there. So for them, if you really want, we can try to have some weekly, let's say, because it all depends on you, what you would like us to do. So I'll also have an internal discussion with my team that you will try to just enhance the topic of the research, and according to the comment try to mold it and resend it once again, and then we can all work on that too as well. Or if you want to work on, and again the second option is available to you all as well, if you want to build that particular research paper with Climate Cadets Collective, you can email us and we will assign you someone with whom you can it will be kind of a research buddy program where you are thinking of like after the research boot camp. Now we have your papers. So what we can have is a weekly research buddy program in Climate Cadets Collective's research area or research wing, which will be working on developing those particular papers that you have submitted in Climate Cadets Collective. And as Parth in the very first session mentioned very well, that it takes a lot of time and energy and efforts to put the first step in. And now you're already in there, just a little more, and you'll definitely reach the path and the journey and the destination you want to go on. Yes, Devashish. Now Devashish will also tell you some of the insights that he got from some of the papers and some of the reviews that he has done.
So hello everyone. Sorry for the issue earlier. It was an issue with my laptop. So while I was going through research tracks, there was like people all around the globe. I could see submissions from people all around. Like someone was from Budapest, someone from Pakistan, and someone even from Peru. That was a great experience, having that, going through that global, what students around the globe are thinking, what the pressing issues, what the pressing issues there are for their countries. Like someone from Pakistan wanted, to work on green spaces, nature-based solutions. Pakistan is a developing country, and same issue of green spaces, it's prevalent in India. Like, tier 1 cities like Delhi, it has a lot of green cover, but I am actually working on urban villages, so there's this issue of green spaces. Like there's literally no green space at all. But when you go to in the same city, when you go to let's say South Delhi, let's say Chanakyapuri, it's green. You can see green cover all over it. The same issues we face in India. I saw this. It was faced by people in Pakistan, and when I was going through some abstracts, many of you like I could see uh, many submissions. You used AI. It's absolutely fine to use AI. Like there's nothing wrong, but when when you try to ideate something, there should be novelty, right? There were basically, let's say, around 30 to 40% points were for novelty. Your how unique your idea is, right? So obviously there were many submissions, mm, and yeah.
All right, all right. Thank you so much, Devashish, for your remarks as well. And I think I have something to add. And maybe I think Parth is also here and now, as we were thinking of making this session kind of an interactive one, where we can just interact with you and answer your questions. But before we start with that, you can start to raise your hand. We can keep it one by one after that. But I think very well mentioned point was, as Devashish mentioned, was of AI use. And second is the big one is your plagiarism, or what we also refer to as your similarity index. Uh, Kritika, am I audible to everyone? Is it going good?
You are audible.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
audible.
Okay. So, all right. So before we move to the third part of the publication part of it, let's start with that. So when you send your paper for publication to any journal, or any good, research, or any good institution where they are publishing, they check two things for publication. The first one is your similarity index, and the second is what we also refer to as your AI index, which is now absolutely being used. So, both of the every general and very nice, fine publication house would prefer to have your similarity index and your AI index lesser than 20%. Now, what I mean by similarity index, and or what we also refer to as something called plagiarism. So, it is something that your research findings, how much similar are they to the existing research which is already there? And when I started working on my research journey, I realized, because the fact is, when the major portion of your research is what we also refer to as called the literature review. So, one point of time in literature review, you are including the things which are being researched by someone else. And on the other hand, you also want to make sure that your research is standing out and is not as similar to the existing knowledge which is already there. So, this becomes a very good conflict of interest, or whatever we want to call it. And it is very important that you deal with it. And how to deal with it? Because most of the researchers, plagiarism will definitely come from the part, or the major part of literature review in your research paper or in your research article. Now, how to reduce it? The most important thing to do before you actually, because what is a literature review? Now think again. A literature review is what you think from the existing knowledge. And when I say you think from the existing knowledge, there should be your comments, there should be your perceptions, there should be your understanding from the existing research. That should not be something like you reading a paper, you have just copy pasted a particular paragraph from that research, copy pasted from another paper, copy pasted from another paper, and you have pasted so many things from so many different things you have referred to, and that's how you're making your paper. This is one first draft. The first draft you're making would be something like that. But then how you have to go ahead is that if you have read that particular paragraph from that particular research paper and you want to add it, you need to understand that particular paragraph, rephrase it very importantly, and then write it in your own why are you including that particular paragraph in your research? That becomes important. Like, why do you think this is an apt thing? So let's say I'm working on climate finance and I found that I'm giving a definition of adaptation finance and something going on. So many people have written about adaptation. Now I want to put some things from over their paper and I want to add it in my paper. But to make, because the moment I add it in my paper, it becomes my research. And if I do not, change it, edit it, or include some of my understanding points in that particular research paper, it becomes a waste of time and it becomes that person's research which is there. Now, how to remove the similarity whenever you are copying, pasting, or whenever you are actually referring to some other existing research? There are two ways of actually dealing through it. The first one is what we also refer to as in-text citation. So in-text citation, whenever you're reading a good research paper, and it is very much important that you add it, whenever you're reading a good research paper, let's say there's a good path that is being mentioned, let's say there is some line which is being mentioned, which is directly being taken from another research paper, you must also write in a bracket after the full stop the name of the author and the year. That is what we also refer to as the in-text citation. That in the text itself, you are adding the citation part in a small bracket, right? And after that, you can also sometimes add footnotes. So why and specifically footnotes become an important part. Let's say you're working on some quantitative research, or you have mentioned some data in that particular research paper and you have added that. If there is, like, after the in-text citation, if there's something, let's say a data point has been used, and most of the times that's where your publication will also reject your papers, because they would not find where exactly this particular data point is being taken from. And the research, when the journal, so understand, when a journal publish a paper, it becomes their identity as well, not just author's identity, it becomes their identity as well. So before they publish, they also need to make sure that every single point that is mentioned in that particular paper or research must be verifiable as well, not just by them, but also by anyone. And to make it verifiable by anyone, you can also add a footnote. So you can, if you're working on a Word document, there is an option of footnote. If you're working on Google Doc, there is an option of footnote. So in your footnote, you may add because nowadays most of us are actually reading these papers online, so we have that what we refer to, like, what we have something called links. So it is important that you actually attach the particular link also. This is not a part of your references. So in-text citation becomes a part of your references, but your footnote is never a part of your references. But a footnote makes sure that your research is authenticated, it is verifiable very easily. So these are the two things that you can use to reduce your similarity index, or what we also refer to as plagiarism, right? And that's the first and foremost important thing that is being checked by any research journal. And that's what makes your research stand out and it makes it yours. Now, second thing that is being checked in any journal is AI use. And as mentioned by Parth, as mentioned by Devashish, obviously in this arena where you just have to give a prompt to the AI to generate a particular paper or write a research article or paper for you, it becomes very small task for you to actually write a research paper. But one point that you need to note is that if it is easy for you, it is easy for everyone else, right? So if you are writing a paper with AI, everybody else can also write a paper with AI. But those papers will not be accepted and published, because what is important, as Devashish mentioned, the important point is the way you think. Because in today's scenario, it's not limited what you can do. You can do anything, but you can do anything that you can think of. That is what is the entire mind game, or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, the research. Because research is entire your thinking procedure. Once you give a prompt to AI, it will generate things for you, but you have to make sure that you are giving a prompt which is nobody else has given, and that is what is making your research stand out. But now there is also an important thing, that how to not write entirely with AI, because of course the journals which are publishing a paper also want your AI index also to be as low as 20%, not just your similarity index. So how to deal with it? Firstly, not to write exactly by AI. So this is a good point where I can bring how to use AI entirely in your research paper. So first and foremost important thing, if you want to write this thing in your registers or whatever, you want to take a note or whatever, please do that. you first and foremost important thing that you're writing a research, and if you're using AI, then you have to use ethically. And AI has to be used very ethically. The research idea that you're having must be your own, must not be exactly taken from AI. Because if it is giving you, if AI answer is being given to you for a particular research, it can be given to 1,000 other people. And if 1,000 other people are working, then how is your research standing out, right? That's one important thing. So let's say you start brainstorming with it. That is an important thing. That is actually very good thing, a good practice in research that you can do. Brainstorm. So for example, when you sit with your professor or your supervisor, you will be like, I am thinking of working on this, but I'm having this issue ki, should I take this part of it, should I take that part of it, should I take that part of it. So if you start brainstorming with AI, this becomes good because it will give you so many options. But then what you need to keep in mind that you're not taking any one of those options. You're only reading those options and taking them in your mind, and then bringing your own thoughts into it, and then choosing a particular researched idea. So AI will give you everything and everything and everything, but you need to make sure you are using it, but not using it exactly as it is. You need to change something in that. You need to add your ideas into it. So what I want to say here is that whenever you are using an AI for your research paper or for your research writing, if you want your paper to stand out, do not exactly take what it gives you, but brainstorm with AI and then enhance your own ideas, and that will help you and with your research as well. Hello. Okay. Okay. Kritika, can you take it? I have a delivery.
Hi, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat, please.
Hi. Yes, so sorry. So sorry. Thank you so much. Yes, please feel free to put up your questions in the comment section. And I was at AI and your research. Yes. So brainstorm with it, and do not take everything as it is. And then second important things that is important for you all to notice, use AI, but so for example, many of you I know because I'm a recent researcher and I'm a new researcher too. So I know what we all are doing in today's scenario. We are taking things from one particular paper, and we need to make sure that our similarity index has to go down. So to reduce our plagiarism score, what we are doing is just we are taking and rephrasing it with AI, right? That is not a good practice. It will increase your AI score. All right. So what we all do is that we take it from one paper, and then we go to AI, and then AI very well, it does so good work of, rephrasing it for you, and then you can paste the entire thing over there. That is solving first problem of yours, which is of your similarity index, or what we also refer to as plagiarism. But it is increasing your second problem, and that is of your AI index or AI use. So I mean, most of the places will not actually look into your AI use. Like AI index is not seen so much. But again, like I have a thing to tell you that it reflects somewhere or the other the efforts you have put in your research, and the authenticity that your research actually has. So, for example, very recently, all the dissertations that were written in my colleges had their similarity index lesser than 20%. But for example, whenever they were going out presenting that particular paper, those research organizations and those presenters were asking them to give them an AI score below 20, and they had their plagiarism score below almost 12 to 13%, which is almost less than 20. Is a good score, but their AI score was to some extent going to 80%, 90%, and sometimes it was almost 95%. So this gives a very bad reflection. So first of all is that you actually make sure that whatever you're writing, you're only asking AI to. So how I work on my research, I write by myself, but it does not mean that this is the final thing I'm putting, because when I write, I put a lot of mistakes. I do a lot of mistakes when I write, right? Hello. I'm so sorry, everyone. Yes, so where I was. Okay, I was telling about your AI score and plagiarism. Yes. So your plagiarism goes down when you rephrase it with AI and where I was. What was my last point I was talking about, Kritika? All right.
You were saying that his plagiarism was 13%, but his AI use was 90% or something.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So I was giving you an example. So whenever you go for a presentation and whenever you are sending your article for a very good journal, they are looking for your AI index, they're looking for your plagiarism as well. So both of them has to go below 20% at max. You can write your entire paper, but then to work on AI index, you can try and go and humanize it with a lot of other websites which are there to humanize your particular paper. So the issue with those tools, so like AI Humanizer, if you just search on Google, you will find a lot of them. You can go and use any of them. But the issue with them is that they'll humanize 250 words at once until unless you have a subscription and it humanizes entirely for you. That becomes another thing. But then the issue that comes with those humanizer is that they change the meaning a bit. They do change the tone, they do change the meaning as well. So you need to make sure that whenever you are humanizing as well, you're rereading whatever you have written or whatever that AI tool has given to you. That's one thing to bring your AI down. And second thing to humanize your particular research is by not using any other AI tool, because then again, it's sometimes somewhere or the other it is using AI to humanize it again. It's not humanized by human. It is again humanized by AI. Whenever you're going for any particular website or to humanize your article, so you can humanize it by yourself. You can just see. You can ask the reviewer or the presenter or wherever you are submitting, or before you actually submit, you can get the plagiarism and AI report from someone who has access to it. If you're working in your university, you can go to your library and ask them to give you the plagiarism and AI report and check particularly which paragraphs are read for the similarity, which paragraphs in which particular part is increasing your similarity index, which particular part is increasing your AI index, and then you can particularly work on rephrasing that part, adding conjunctions into it, adding some and in if by the way before, all such languages in between, so that it humanizes whatever you have written as well. So these are two, three, four important things that I had to add before we actually call up. Yes, Kritika.
Like which AI or plagiarism checker is most reliable one, because when we check on different tool, it gives different percentage. So which one we should trust?
Uh,
Why?
I think the one that most of the universities have is that I think paper. I'm not remember. I know the name. I'm sure. But I have the access to it also. 1 minute. Which one is the one that we always this that universities have access to? Parth,
Ma'am,
can you help?
paper pal.
Paper pal is available, but paper pal is it's not the ones that universities use. Universities have another one. Turnitin. Yes. Thank you so much, Suhavni Dudeja. Turnitin. Yes. So most of the institutions use Turnitin. So if you're in university, ask your college library or ask your professors. They all have access to Turnitin to give you a Turnitin report, which will and there's this one another thing. So now, for example, even I have Turnitin access, but the issue with that is that until unless they purchase an AI subscription for the same, they will not have access to it. So it depends on what Turnitin subscription they also have. So you try to ask for both the reports, the AI report also and plagiarism also. Right now, Turnitin is used for AI for plagiarism only, not AI. But big institutions and journals always have access to both the parts of Turnitin report. So you get your report and then you work on humanizing and working on it by yourself. And when I mentioned humanizer, you can just go on Google and write any AI humanizer. The one I use, maybe I can put it AI humanizer. I'm putting one or two on in your comment section so you can look into it. Okay. My laptop is lagging. Any one of you can just AI humanizer. There is this one. I'm sharing it. Quillbolt's one is also very good. People use it a lot. Grammarly has its own as well. Okay. But the one I use is because it's also about freely accessible tool, right? So I use this one. Because Grammarly and Quillbolt always ask, yes, tell writer someone is pasting here as well. Very good. So these are, I've just mentioned one which I use because I think it's merely fine for me. But anyone, you can pick anyone and then work on it. But again, I mentioned these AI humanizers you can use, but then you have to also read and rewrite your paper, your particular stuff or your paragraph again after, humanizing it with AI, because again, it will change your it'll definitely change your meaning, and specifically when your paper is a little philosophical one, or if you're working in humanity aspect, then it can change it to a very large extent, like a very large extent. Or if you're working in some very data point factual things, then it can also be a very big blunder as well. So before you actually write whatever it gives you, you need to read it and rephrase it once again before you actually paste it. This goes to it. Next, publications. Depending upon your research area, you may also try to find out a few journals. So as I mentioned in the very first session, we mentioned that before you actually start writing, you have to choose 5 to 10 papers which you are making your base as, and those 5 to 10 papers must be from very good journals. So you may try to target those particular journals only for your publication. Now what makes Scopus becomes an issue, obviously. But for example, the recent dissertation paper that I had written, because the Scopus takes time. Scopus takes literally a lot of time to respond to. But when they have to reject the paper, they respond within 2-3 days itself. Because they reject the paper on the basis of obviously those two things which I mentioned. But if they are not responding to your paper after submission for almost a month or so, then you may try to get a reviewers comment from them, and then you can try to resolve those reviewers comment, and then you can try to submit that paper. With my recent publication, what happened is, because it comes in research ethics, right, that your paper that you are submitting to a particular journal should not be published somewhere else. But it is absolutely advisable that you submit to 2-3 journals, so that if one is rejecting, there is somewhere or the other an option of getting an acceptance from another journal as well. So we submit our papers to a lot of other paper submission and wherever you think, right? But most important point to note at that point is, because when I published my paper, I submitted to an international journal, and there is a Scopus publication also where I submitted my paper. My paper was accepted for publication in another journal, and I was keeping on waiting from Scopus. As I mentioned, Scopus take time, almost 3 to 4 months it can take for just to get back to you from your submission. So I was not hearing back from Scopus, so I published it. Now, when I got back from Scopus, it became an issue because my paper was already published somewhere else. So this becomes an issue, and it's not an issue there. I can ask those people to retract. I can retract my paper from over there where I published and submit it to Scopus. So it's also all on your personal ethics as well. What do you
Not
think is good or not? Am I audible? I hope I am.
Now you are.
Hi. Okay. ठीक है. All right. So that's pretty much it. And how the paper submission goes in. So as I mentioned, your paper, whenever you just go, you open the Scopus, and you take up one journal, and you have some option of go for submission. And if not that, there are so many other presses also where you can submit. If you will go to a lot of other universities websites, the institutions, the research institutions, they also have their open calls. And then another point to get your open calls is from LinkedIn. A lot of journals, they release their open call for publication and submission on LinkedIn. Even when we are publishing some of the things in our organization, we put it on LinkedIn. So be a little active, follow the pages, follow the organizations which are working on research related to your particular interest, and then you can get your things published. Now I think we are almost over the time, and of course it's not like you submitted and the paper has been submitted and it's on. No, once the paper is accepted, the real work begins from over there as well, because they also will they will reach out to you again and again to change something from over there, add this certificate, add that certificate. So you have to be very active thoroughly to the entire procedure until you receive a publication in your own hands. So this is an important thing that I had to mention, because they'll ask you to help them in typesetting. They'll ask you to put in one certificate, change this thing to something else. Then becomes another issue altogether. But that's a good issue. That's a good problem to have, because there is a journal, there is a publication house which is asking you to help them with your publication. So I'll call it with it, and I think I've already given instructions on your submitted papers. So you'll get your status by tomorrow in emails, and then you can write emails accordingly. Email in the sense you can write to climatecaderscollective@gmail.com. I would be happy if someone from the team can put this Gmail. The Gmails you have received your meeting link and everything, the same one. Yes. You can email us that I want to work on this particular thing with your research team, and I'll definitely look into it if someone from the research team can accompany you. And now I think we can start the question and answers. Before I end up with it, Parth or Devashish, if you have something to add. Okay.
No.
Okay, Kritika, I think we can go with questions, I guess. If there are questions, people can raise their hands.
Sure, sure. If anyone have question, you can either drop them in chat or you can raise your hand.
There's a question, Noraha Sangna. What if someone uses AI to rephrase a text that is their original idea just to make it sound better? How does you use reduce plagiarism? So I think plagiarism is not an issue. AI use will become an issue in that, because if it's your own idea, then it will not be a plagiarism. Plagiarism is different. Plagiarism is that you have copied someone else's idea. So it is. So for example, whenever I am thinking of a topic of research and I have some idea and I'm like, I'll work on AI and human work, day-to-day domestic chores. So this is my own idea. How is AI making human day-to-day work at home easy? Now I don't have a particular tagline that I can put in my research. I will go to AI and I'll tell them I'm trying to think of some research on how exactly AI has transformed the domestic chores and how it is helping the housewives. It will give me a good catchy idea and phrase that becomes your topic. That's how you can use it. That's how it will be your original idea. Now there can be an issue of AI flag into it, but I think itna AI flag will work. This much flag will definitely work. So my question is, which AI prelim checker is the more? I think I've already answered this one. When going for publication, what are some red flags that we should watch out for as first timers? Very important question. Thank you so much for asking this question, Swagni. So let's say if you're in your universities and you have a publication to be done, and most of the universities will ask you as your assignments that your paper must be published in some ISSN number journal something. If they're very highly thinking of themselves, they'll ask you to get some Scopus Index publication. But I'm telling you, even some PhD holders do not have their Scopus Index publication, because I'm telling you, it becomes a huge line, and then you don't have time. So important point for you too, ki if you have a lot of time and your research is really important, like really think it can literally get into it, then only you should give it a little time. Otherwise, your paper can be published in any other journal, right? But any other journal means that any other journal must be an ISSN number. And that journal, it is important that it can be associated to some university or something, the organization which is, so for example, which is leading it, that also becomes an important thing. I think ISSN number is the most important part of it. If your paper is being published in some like if it's in a university or a degree level requirement for you to publish, then they definitely will ask you for an ISSN number. But ISSN number is with a lot of other, a lot of other journals also have an ISSN number, but then you can look for some other publications from that particular journal where you are publishing yours. You can go on Google and try to check out the comments people have on their journals. Also, you can check out their reviewing process as well. So I'll tell you an example. So when I submitted my paper for this particular journal publication, 3 reviewers and massive big comments of change. And when I did this, I was literally crying because there were literally big comments and big reviewers' comments, right? So I had to do a lot of change before that paper published in that particular journal. But from Scopus, the reviewers had no particular comments. They were happy with it. And there was very small minor things that they asked me to work on or add a particular certificate in the public in the paper before it gets accepted in the Scopus. So this is an important thing. It can be. You can check the procedure they are checking. The peer-reviewed journals, obviously, we are talking about. In peer reviews also, you must see how they're checking their reviewers, how they're reaching out to the reviewers, how who are the people who are submitting, because peer review some or the other would be the people who have already published in that particular journals. That's how journals work, right? Journals work, you go and sign up for any particular journal, they'll ask you in a separate thing or column that are you open to be a reviewer also. So it means that if you are publishing in a particular journal, your paper would be reviewed by people who have already written and already published in that particular journal. So you may see the kind of people who are working, their profiles also if you want, and then you can publish your paper over there. I would prefer you to have these questions being asked over the phone. I think that will be a good conversation. But okay, I think it answers your question, Suhavni, right? Is it open? You all can turn on your audios, right? Okay, thank you. Then we have another question. Hello, my question is, if we genuinely have interest in idea and the choice of idea is our own, but for research solution, if we don't know the particular subject, maybe like advanced physics and chemistry for methodologies, is it okay to take the help of AI to learn and select methodologies? Obviously, we're having our own standard and factors to consider for this. Yes, you definitely can. So, for example, you can use, like, I do not know how it goes in physics and chemistry, but I think AI is very well versed with the kind of concepts that are there in that physics and chemistry. So that will help you. But how exactly I can, give you an idea about it is econometrics. So when I was working on my paper, we use econometric models, and in econometric models, somewhere or the other, we are analyzing data, and uh, there are things that but you just somehow not think it can be an issue in that particular model that you're making. But AI can flag it for you. But important point to note is you can put the way it is giving you, but you have to make sure that your AI is not always correct. Whatever it is giving you, before you write it in your paper, you need to match it with a good reference book also, or one reference material also that is being given by good authors. And try to, talk to a lot of other people who are your supervisor and try to discuss, ma'am, this is what I actually came across. This leads to this one, and then that can happen. Is it true or not? So that person will give you an idea about it, because some way or the other, AI will hallucinate it for you. This is an issue, a big issue, that AI do its own hallucinations. It'll give you its own cooked ideas and its own cooked theories and methods. So it is important you cross-check those methods before you put it in your research. Do we have some question being asked with the raise hand, or all of those through the chat? Okay. Do we have hand raised, Ritika? Any?
We do not have raise of hands, but we do have a question in chat. like from Palak, she's asking about the certification. Like, will everyone get the certificates or only selected for people? And second from Nora, she asked, should abstract have in-text citation for credibility? If you are looking to research something that has already been done before, but you are using a different approach. These are the two questions.
Abstracts usually do not have in-text citations. Abstract do not even have references also. Abstract is just a 250, 300, 300 max, I said, paragraph. And if you're writing an extended abstract, okay, there's a difference. There are two kind of abstracts you can write. One is an abstract and the other one is an extended abstract. For a normal abstract, which is just an abstract, it has to be between 250 words to 300. You do not need to put any in-text citation. Let's say if there is a good point of fact, you can add an in-text citation, but not so many, one or two, but it is not so much asked as such. It's a choice. But in an extended abstract, it is majorly asking you for your results and your methodology as well. Then also, it is not necessary that you add your index citation and references, but if it's an extended abstract, you can add your list of references later. But what happens is major list of references I mentioned in extended abstract. Those major list of references would be those 5 to 10 papers which you have based, not more than that. Because normally when you are writing your references, it goes to 3 to 3 to 4 pages, right? If your 3 to 4 pages references only are being sent in abstract, then what will be in your paper? That becomes a question. So I think it's not important and necessary, but if let's say there is a big point and data fact that is mentioned and you think it is important for authority to give it, please add. Majorly in abstract, do not write all of these data points and facts also. You are only telling what you intend to do, what are your expectations from the result, and how will it benefit people. It's just writing this much. So you don't need to write very specific things in your abstract that might need in-text citation and references. Palak said, will only one certificate, will one only receive the certificate? This is the concept of I hope it helped you literally get an idea about how to do research. I am not taking any more questions on chat. Raise your hand and ask, otherwise let's call it a deal. All right. So for answering Palak and everyone about your certificates, I think our research directors have already taken a note of your attendance in the session in all 3 sessions. So the person who has attended all 3 sessions and has also submitted a research paper, irrespective of the kind of status that person has in the research paper, will get a research bootcamp certificate after matching all these 4 criteria. Okay. And the other people, I hope you have learned something, because our main motive was not to give you a certificate, and our motive is still our main motive is not to actually give you a certificate, but our main motive was to actually help you with your own papers, with your ideas and your own research. So I think that's what is okay with you. When we'll know, so I said we will mail by tomorrow. It's not about results, it's just a status. It's just about how much you need to do more in your research, or how good you are already, that your paper is already good and you are good for this. So do not consider this as a big research result as of it. The results are the ones which when you get a publication. But yes, we will update you about your status of the paper by tomorrow. And as I mentioned that the ones which are red or the ones which are yellow, or yellow and red means not accepted. Yellow means you need to work on it before we actually before we accept it or before you actually submit it anywhere else. So you can email us and we will try to work on them with you. There's just one question from Senore. I would like to know a bit more about the publication procedure in journal like Q1 journal. What about APC? Is it mandatory for paying an APC? If so, what can be the option that can have to pay? And that is an important thing, the payments and publications. Yes. Actually, people, I would advise you a very good journal would not ask you for payment. That's an important thing for you to know. If it is a very good journal, it will not ask you for payment. But most of the times, what happens is, for example, in your universities, when you have to get a publication in a very short span of time, as I mentioned, good journals always take time for acceptance or for reviewing your things, because they are not paying, because obviously they take time because people will review it when they have time, and then they'll reach out to the they'll submit their reviews, and then a good journal never has one reviewer. They always have 3 to 4 reviewers at max, so it will take time. So those will not ask you for for public for payment, but many journals do ask for it, and I think that's a red flag. I'm not saying that you should never pay. If it's an urgency, in urgency obviously you will have to pay, but if it's no urgency of a publication, then obviously take your time, submit in other papers, submit it in some other institutions, and deal with it. Yes, so do not pay until it's very urgent for you to get your publications immediately. And if you're very sure that you've done a very good research, why to pay? I would not say that pay a single penny for your publication part of it. And also, I would tell you, so where I have published mine, it's so most of the journals have offers, and you know, they can waive off your fee as well for publication. So whenever you are submitting them, and if there is a big charge fee, you can email them, and you can always email them and ask them ki I'm a student and I want to publish my paper, and you have accepted, but I do not have money to actually publish, so I'm taking my paper back. I say, so you can put it. So if your paper is really good, if the reviewers have given good comments about your paper, they would not charge you fee. They would like, we are calling it off for you, because journals who do not really want a good paper to go to another journal. So if you're very much confident about your research, never pay. Any other
Question,
question?
we have to raise a hand. George, you can ask a question.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. My name is George. I'm from Kenya, and I would really like to thank the facilitators of this bootcamp for organizing this research bootcamp. So I have 2 questions that are linked. One is, what is the extent of the collaboration that your organization provides at this stage if one is doing a research? How are the collaborators coming in to assist in that research? The second question that is linked to it is that if I want to do a research later on, after this session is completed and some time has passed, would you or the organization or the participants or maybe the researchers here would be open for such an engagement? Would that be something that is feasible or viable on your end? Thank you so much, and yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, George, for the question. Thank you so much for joining as well. So for the first question, in what capacity? So it depends on how it all depends on the person. So for example, when we will be just mailing you about the status of your research papers, the ones we have rejected and the ones which we have selected, and the ones which need some review. So my point right now is to actually help as in the form of an assistance in one-on-one, maybe with a few comments and with a few directions for the ones which, for the researchers or for the research papers which need a just little modification. So we would not ask for co-authorship for those papers at all. But then there is third category of papers and third category of researchers which are literally at the very nascent stage, which is why we have not selected them as well. But they are good, or maybe they need some ideas, changes, or something like that. So for both of these people, it's open to them. So once we close it, we will reach out to them, and we would update them about the status of their research papers, and we would ask them in what capacity you would like us to help you. The one can be that we are helping you out in, let's say, rewriting the entire research, and it's going long and long. I am also adding something. In the sense, my people, in the sense, someone from my research team is working in collaboration with the person as well. So if it is going in, if it's a long-term engagement and both of them are contributing to that research to make it at par and make it a publishable research outcome, which is a good thing, they will both collaborate on it and they would both be co-authoring it. It will be like someone from Climate Credits Collective is co-authoring with someone who has just joined. And then second form of engagement can be that you can choose. You can mention that I would just need some directions. I do not want a co-author. I simply want you to tell me about this research, about this particular thing, give me some reviews and everything. So I think particular reviews have already been marked in the research in the sheet that we have. So someone who has reviewed your paper already would reach out to you, will write your comments and reviews in the paper, will give it to you. And then you can reach out to us whenever you have issue. We are always open to help you out and help everyone else out. But again, it will be like whenever you are coming to us and telling us a problem, we will tell you a solution to that particular problem. We will just guide you. In the first way, we'll give you two options. First way, you can co-author with someone from our organization, and second, that we can guide you. Anyone from the organization can guide you. So these are two things. And for the third category of people whose researches are actually accepted very good, if they are not published as of now, we would give you two options. That we'll make these forms as I'm telling you. We'll give you two options. First is that you can get it published in our website, because if you need some very urgent publication. And second is that obviously I you will receive, you can mail or you can reach out to someone, maybe me only. I'll deal with those good papers, okay? So you can reach out, you can write an email to us again and say that I want to publish this. Where can I submit it? So I'll send a few research journals links with you, and then you can submit it there. And if there's some issue, there's some guidance you need, obviously will be there. That's how I was thinking of engagement, but it's not so much rigid. If there are comments that I have from people, if you want something to be changed in one way or the other, I'm definitely open to it. So yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think we are almost over the time. Do we have more questions? Ideal journal. As I also like to manage not you have to do your research in that. Like you need to search on Google, go on every journal's website, mark them all up. So it's also about your area. So my area is in sustainability. We all are working in climate finance. So there are so many journals and there are research and reviews in sustainability. There are institutions which are working on climate only. They also publish a lot of reports in every single month, and everyone you can reach out to them and ask them to publish your paper as such. Any other question and anything? I think that's almost over, and I'm so glad that we are completing this research boot camp all together now. Do we have any more comments or anything to be added by anyone from the team or anyone before before we actually give a thank you to everyone? No. I would also request my team to turn on their videos if possible. Yeah. But people from ECB, people from here.
Path is not here.
Okay.
He has gone.
Okay, Zapnath, would you turn on your video? Someone may take some screenshots, and everyone, I would request everyone to turn on their video, because we're just at the end of this entire 3 days of boot camp, and it is not just 3 days. It was almost 3 days and 5 more days added for a week, almost. So it's entirely a week's boot camp that we did, and I think it went well with the kind of people we had, the kind of questions we had, everyone. So before we actually call this session off, I would like to give a thank you note to everyone. So thank you so much for turning on your video. So it's so nice to see people over here. Thank you. All right. Okay. Definitely, and everyone, I hope you're taking good screenshots, right? Right. So I would just like to give a thank you note to every single individual who joined the session, submitted their papers, and I hope you have learned something or the other in one way or the other. And I'm so glad that you all joined. There might be some issues, there might be some things which might have got wrong, and you think there's something that can be changed. So I'll be looking forward to your feedback, your reviews, and everything over our Gmails. And our community is open to all of you. You have all joined the WhatsApp group. So one way or the other, you have all become the Climate Carrots Collective's volunteers. So we'll keep on sharing a lot of opportunities on our community, on our groups. So I hope to keep seeing you again and again for all of such things, because research is not just one thing we do. We work on a lot of other issues. We work on youth diplomacy and climate diplomacy also. So my friends from another country, we have another initiative which is also called the BETHUG, which is a cross-country collaboration dialogues that we do. So I would soon reach out to people over there, whenever we are doing it, and at this next round of BETHUG. And the community engagement team, the people in India, the people specifically in Delhi, we have something big coming up. How many of you are from Delhi, by the way? Any raise of hand or any emoji? Okay. So yes, okay. So we have something called Climate Week of India coming. So we are the ones. Climate Week of India is absolutely happening all over India. So if you're in any part of India, obviously you can be a part of it. I'll connect you with the organizations which are leading on ground climate initiatives. It's happening from 24th September to 2nd of October this year. And the people in Delhi, please, we need a lot of people and hands to work on, because we are the ones leading it in Delhi and NCR area. So if you have an organization, or if you're working in an organization and you want to collaborate, please reach out to me, or just email us, and would be really happy to work on with you. And yes, please keep yourself stay tuned in the groups and everything. We'll have a lot of other opportunities open for you all. So any feedback, anything, any chit chat you also want to do, because all of you are now looking good. Like I can see people, I'm not feeling like going back now. Thank you so much everyone for turning your videos on now. I'm really happy to see all the faces. Any comment, anything for us, any feedback? Or okay, one thing before I actually give it all. Let's give it a big round of applause for our partner organization, ECB Youth Foundation, for the people of Climate Carrots Collective's research team, the directors. We have Bhuvi, who has literally worked so hard for all your papers, the reviews she was handling. People are responding, people are not responding, so Bhuvi ke liye. And then we have Devashish, we have Zepnath, who have literally from the very beginning created this entire program with me. Then we have Parth from ECB who did that entirely. Then we have our moderators, Kritika, we have Lavish, we have Tarini, and the entire research team, which actually worked thoroughly for almost over a week. And I'm so glad that you all were there, and wouldn't have been possible without you all, because getting registrations almost 370 plus, and then people almost 100 and plus in each session. And by the third, we have 51, which is another of bigger. Yes, Bhuvi. Obviously, I mentioned Bhuvi. So I think Bhuvi is here. Are you there? I think she had another meeting as well, so she mentioned that. But anyway, she was handling it entirely. The entire research team of Climate Carrots Collective. It was for one of their very big event altogether, with almost 370 participants from all over the world. So yeah. Thank you everyone for your contributions and for making it stand out for everyone. Any comments or anything, then we can just call this session off, or this boot camp off, if you want to share anything. Any comments? I'll turn off the video recording.